one confession, one kiss. And suddenly, nothing between us felt innocent anymore. I can't say when I first started noticing her differently. Maybe it was the way she lingered at the door when I came by, as if she had one more thing to say but couldn't quite find the words. Or maybe it was her laugh, quiet, low, the kind that stays with you long after it fades. She lived just across the courtyard from me. I used to help her with small things, carrying groceries, fixing the flickering kitchen light, watering the plants when she was away. It started like that, harmless, neighborly. But over time, it became something else. I began to look forward to her messages. "If you're free, could you stop by for a minute?" Always polite, always casual. But every visit stretched longer than it should have. 10 minutes became 30. Then an hour. Until it wasn't about errands anymore, it was about conversation. About staying. Her home felt different from mine, warm, lived in, with soft music always playing somewhere in the background. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel deliberate. A cup of tea placed carefully in front of me. A blanket draped over the back of the couch, just in case I stayed too long. She never said it, but I could tell she liked the company. I liked it too. There was something quietly magnetic about her, the way she carried herself, confident but never distant. She spoke with the kind of calm that comes from experience, from having seen enough life to know what truly matters. And yet, beneath that calm, there was something else, a hint of loneliness she tried to disguise as independence. I saw it in the way she'd pause mid-sentence, eyes drifting toward the window before she'd smile again, like she was chasing away a thought she didn't want me to notice. Sometimes, when she laughed, I'd catch myself staring, not because she was beautiful in an obvious way, but because she was composed, graceful. The kind of beauty that doesn't shout for attention, it just exists. One evening, as I was leaving, she reached out instinctively and touched my arm, just a light brush, a thank you kind of touch, but it froze me in place. Her hand was warm, her eyes soft. She didn't pull away immediately, and neither did I. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that makes time move slower, and said, "You're too kind, really." That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed that moment again and again, the sound of her voice, the feel of her hand, the unspoken question hanging between us. It wasn't love yet. Not even close. But something had shifted, something small, invisible, and dangerous in its quiet way. I started finding excuses to see her. And when I couldn't, I'd catch myself looking toward her window, wondering if she was thinking about me too. I told myself it was nothing. Just comfort. Familiarity. But deep down, I knew better. Something had begun, slow, uncertain, and impossible to ignore. It was the kind of rain that made the whole city slow down, steady, patient, like it wasn't in any hurry to stop. I was just packing up to leave her place when it started coming down harder. She looked out the window, then back at me, and said softly, "You might as well stay until it eases up." So I did. She poured 2 glasses of wine, turned off the kitchen light, and let the glow from the living room lamp do the rest. The air felt warmer, softer. I could hear the rain tapping against the windows, a kind of rhythm that filled the spaces between our words. We sat across from each other, and for the first time, there wasn't a task or excuse holding us there, no light to fix, no favor to ask. Just her and me, with nothing to hide behind. She started talking about her week, but the conversation drifted, from errands and work, to memories, to the kind of stories people only tell when they forget to guard themselves. She told me about her first apartment, a place so small she could stretch her arms and touch both walls. About how she used to fall asleep to the hum of traffic outside, and how sometimes, even now, she missed that sound. There was a gentleness in her voice when she spoke about the past. A sadness, too, the kind that comes from knowing how quickly time moves. When she asked about me, I hesitated. It felt strange, being asked to talk about myself with someone who actually wanted to listen. I told her about the job I wasn't sure I liked, about how I didn't really know what I wanted out of life yet. She smiled, not pitying, just understanding. "You've got time," she said. "You don't have to have it all figured out. Nobody really does." The way she said it, calm, certain, it hit something in me. She made the world feel less heavy for a moment. As the night stretched on, the rain softened. She stood to refill our glasses, and her hand brushed my shoulder lightly as she passed. Nothing intentional, but it sent a quiet current through me. I watched her move through the dim light, graceful without trying to be. There was a stillness then, not awkward, just close. She sat beside me this time, not across. The couch dipped slightly under her weight. The scent of her perfume, something floral and faintly sweet, filled the air between us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the rain. I remember her sigh, barely a sound, more like an exhale of something she'd been holding in for too long. In that silence, I felt it, a shift, small but undeniable. Not in what we said, but in what we didn't. That night, I didn't just see her as the woman next door. I saw her as someone who lived, lost, and learned to keep going. And maybe, for the first time, she saw me not as a boy helping out, but as a man who wanted to understand her. I came by again a few nights later. Not for any reason, or at least, not one I could admit to myself. I just wanted to see her. To hear her voice again. She opened the door with that familiar half-smile, the kind that felt like both a welcome and a warning. She was wearing a simple dark sweater, her hair tied loosely back. There was something softer about her that night, something quieter in her eyes. We sat in the living room, the same couch, the same low light. The air between us felt different though, heavier, charged with something unsaid. She seemed distracted, her thoughts somewhere else. Every time our eyes met, she'd look away quickly, as if afraid of what might spill out if she held my gaze for too long. I tried to fill the silence with small talk, asked about her day, the rain, anything. But she wasn't really answering anymore. Just nodding, tracing her thumb along the rim of her glass. Then, finally, she spoke. "You ever wonder what people think about, when they're alone?" Her tone wasn't casual. It was the kind of question that comes after too many nights spent thinking. I said something simple, something like, "Yeah, I do." But it wasn't the right answer, not to what she was really asking. She turned toward me, her expression unreadable, eyes dark and steady. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "I think about things I probably shouldn't." The room felt smaller. My heart was pounding, though I tried not to show it. She took a breath, deep, shaky, and kept going. "I've thought about you," she said. "More than I should have." The words landed softly, but they hit hard. She looked down immediately after, like she wished she could pull them back, but it was too late. They were out there, between us, alive. I didn't know what to say. My mouth was dry. Every part of me wanted to close the space between us, to touch her hand, to tell her I'd thought about her too, but something held me still. "I know it's wrong," she whispered, eyes still fixed on the glass in her lap. "You're younger, you've got your whole life ahead of you. But when you talk to me, when you look at me..." She paused, exhaled, searching for the right words. "It makes me feel seen again." That last part, seen again, it broke something open in me. I wanted to tell her that I saw her more clearly than anyone else ever could. That it wasn't pity or curiosity, it was something real, something I couldn't name. But all I managed was her name, barely a whisper. When she finally met my eyes again, there was no hesitation left. Only truth. Only vulnerability. And for the first time since I'd met her, I realized she wasn't untouchable. She was human. And she just handed me her heart without meaning to. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. The kind that holds 1,000 things neither of us were ready to say. The air felt strange after her confession, heavier somehow, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Neither of us moved. The sound of the clock on her wall suddenly felt too loud, the tick of each second stretching the silence between us. She sat back, one hand over her mouth, eyes wide but calm. "I shouldn't have said that," she murmured. But the tremor in her voice told me she didn't regret saying it, only that she was scared of what it meant. I shook my head slowly. "I'm glad you did." My words came out quiet, almost unsure. She looked at me then, really looked, and I felt it again, that pull I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The rain outside had stopped, but the air still carried that charged stillness that comes right after a storm. She rose from the couch and walked toward the window, crossing her arms. Her reflection in the glass looked softer, younger somehow. "You don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've built walls for a reason. I can't just let someone in." I stood, careful not to close the distance too fast. "You already have." For a long moment she didn't move. Then she turned, slow, deliberate, and her eyes found mine again. The light from the window hit her face just right, tracing the faint lines at the corners of her mouth, the hint of fatigue that the morning light crept through the curtains in soft gold streaks, touching everything gently, her books on the shelf, the half-finished glass of wine, the faint outline of her figure moving quietly in the kitchen. I sat there, half awake, half somewhere else entirely, still replaying the night before. That moment when she leaned in, when her lips met mine, slow, hesitant, full of everything neither of us had dared to say. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the breaking of silence, the crossing of a line we both knew existed. Now, in daylight, everything felt different. Clearer. Louder. Real. I could hear the soft clatter of cups, the low hum of the kettle, and beneath it, the unspoken question hanging in the air, what happens now? She glanced at me when I walked into the kitchen. Her smile was small, almost apologetic. "Morning," she said, her voice steady but quiet. I nodded. "Morning." She poured coffee for both of us, sliding a cup toward me without meeting my eyes. Her movements were precise, careful, as if she was trying to keep the morning ordinary, pretending nothing had changed. But it had. When she finally spoke, her tone was gentle. "I didn't plan for any of that to happen." I didn't answer right away. I could see the conflict written all over her, the way she folded her arms tightly, the way her eyes kept shifting to the window. She wasn't regretting me. She was regretting crossing the line. "You don't have to explain," I said. "I know." She looked at me then, properly this time, and sighed. "You don't. You're young, you think things like this can just happen, without consequences. But it's not that simple for me." Her voice trembled near the end, but she didn't look away. There was no anger, no shame, just honesty. I took a slow breath, stepped closer, but stopped just short of touching her. "It didn't feel wrong," I said quietly. "And I don't think it was." For a moment I saw her soften, the edge in her shoulders relaxing, her eyes glistening like she wanted to believe me. But then she turned away, running a hand through her hair, trying to gather herself. "You don't know what it's like to be me," she whispered. "To have the world already judging you before you've even done anything." There was a pause, long enough for both of us to feel the ache of what couldn't be said. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care what the world thought, that what I felt for her wasn't confusion or fantasy, but something real. But I knew words wouldn't fix this. Not yet. So instead, I reached out and placed my hand gently over hers. She didn't pull away. She didn't speak. She just looked at our hands for a moment, and then smiled faintly, sadly. We sat there like that, two people who had crossed a line they couldn't uncross, trying to pretend the world outside still made sense. And yet, even through the uncertainty, the guilt, the hesitation, there was peace. Because whatever we were now, it was honest. And honesty, for both of us, had been missing for a very long time. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Her messages stopped. The visits ended. Even when I saw her from across the courtyard, watering her plants, taking out the trash, she didn't look my way. Not once. At first, I told myself to give her space. That maybe she needed time to make sense of what happened between us. But time, I realized, doesn't always make things clearer. Sometimes it just makes the silence louder. I'd walk past her door, half hoping she'd open it. Sometimes I'd almost knock, hand lifted, heart pounding, but something always stopped me. Fear, maybe. Respect, maybe. Or the quiet knowing that she was fighting a battle I couldn't see. One evening, I finally saw her again. She was leaving the building, her hair tied up, wearing that long beige coat I always liked. I called her name before I could stop myself. She turned startled. Then she smiled, that polite kind of smile people give when they wish things were simpler. "Hey," she said softly. I could tell she was tired, not just from the day, but from pretending. I asked if we could talk, and after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. We walked down to the park nearby, where the air smelled like rain again and the leaves shimmered under the streetlights. For a while, we didn't speak. We just walked, side by side, close enough for our hands to almost touch. Finally, she said, "You have to understand, I didn't mean to disappear on you." Her tone was careful, deliberate. "But what happened between us, it's not something I can just carry like it's nothing. I've spent years building a life that makes sense. What we did, what I felt, broke that balance." I looked at her, trying to find the right words. "Do you regret it?" She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "No. But I'm scared of what it means." Her honesty cut deep. I told her I wasn't looking for promises or explanations, that I just wanted her to know I still cared, that what I felt wasn't temporary. She stopped walking then, turning toward me fully. Her eyes searched mine, the same eyes that had once looked so sure, now uncertain, conflicted, alive. "You think love is enough?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "I think it's the only thing that ever is." She smiled sadly, the kind of smile that says I wish it were that simple. There was a pause, the kind that stretches time. Then, slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing mine, hesitant but deliberate. "You make me feel things I told myself I was done feeling," she said. "That's what scares me the most." Her hand lingered in mine, warm and trembling. For a moment, the world fell away, the noise, the doubts, the age, the what-ifs. In that stillness, I realized love isn't always about getting it right. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to stand in the middle of everything you can't control, and still choose to feel. Weeks passed. Not a word between us. I told myself it was for the best, that maybe she needed distance to find peace again. But even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it. Some people don't fade with time, they stay with you, quietly, like a song that keeps playing in the background no matter what else is going on. Life went on. I worked, I met friends, I tried to fill the silence. But every little thing, a scent, a phrase, the sound of rain against the window, carried her name somehow. Then, one evening, I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I was walking home, arms full of groceries, when I spotted her outside the cafe on the corner. She was sitting alone, a book in one hand, her coffee untouched. The same calmness surrounded her, that quiet composure I'd fallen for, but something about her felt lighter. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes widened just slightly, then softened. I didn't think, I just walked over. "Hey," I said. She smiled, small but real. "Hey." For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. There was too much history between us to pretend nothing had happened, and too much affection to act like strangers. I asked if I could sit, and she nodded. The air between us wasn't tense this time. It was calm, almost peaceful, like we'd both made peace with something separately, and now we were meeting somewhere in the middle. We talked about ordinary things. Her new project. My new place. The kind of easy conversation that once came naturally to us. But underneath it, there was a quiet understanding. We both remembered everything. After a while, she set her cup down and looked at me carefully. "I thought I'd ruined something that night," she said. "But I think maybe it was the only honest moment I've had in years." I smiled. "You didn't ruin anything." She nodded, her gaze steady but soft. "I miss you," she said, barely above a whisper. It wasn't a dramatic confession, just truth, raw and simple. I reached across the table and touched her hand, gently, without hesitation. She didn't pull away. Her fingers curled slightly around mine, like they were remembering something they'd once known by heart. "I miss you too," I said. We didn't talk about the past after that. We didn't need to. The air said enough, the way she laughed again, the way her eyes lingered on mine when she thought I wasn't looking. As the sun dipped low, casting long orange streaks across the street, we got up and started walking together. Not holding hands, not making promises, just side by side. For once, there was no guilt. No fear. Just a quiet understanding that some connections aren't meant to be rushed, labeled, or explained. Sometimes love doesn't need a future to be real. Sometimes it just needs to be felt, fully, honestly, in the moment you're given. And as we walked, her shoulder brushed mine, a small, familiar touch, and I knew that whatever we were, however it ended, it had already changed both of us forever. As we walked beneath the fading light, I realized that some stories don't need perfect endings, just honest ones. She looked over at me, smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something else to happen. Maybe this was enough, just being here, in this moment, with her. Because sometimes love isn't about forever. Sometimes it's about finally feeling seen. If you felt something in this story, if you've ever had a connection that changed you quietly, even without a promise, leave a comment and tell me what part spoke to you most. And if you want more slow burn, heartfelt stories like this one, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and stay with me for the next chapter of quiet, honest love.